Hi, my name is Maria Garza. I'm 49 years old and I want to tell my story. I had the COVID vaccine Pfizer and I had a reaction to it. The reason why I want to tell my story is because I want to make people aware. I want you to do your research and I want you to be knowledgeable. I want you to know that I'm going to walk you through the steps of what's happened to me. I'm going to start with some history so you know a little bit about me. Um, for the most part, I've been healthy. I don't have a PCP because I don't get sick. I visit my annual checkups with my gynecologist once a year. I visit my dentist and I see my eye doctor. But I don't have a need to see a PCP because I don't even get a flu. If I do get sick, over-the-counter medication, and I'm good to go. I do believe in medical medicine. I work in the medical field. I am not one who is against vaccines or pro-vaccines. I'm just your average individual who listens, who does the research, and who tries to make the best choices for myself. When we were told that our company was eligible for the vaccines, there was a lot of excitement because we were finally going to be able to try to get to some kind of normality, even though we knew that it was going to be difficult and it was going to take time. I've been working since March with full PPE, face mask, N95s. Even though I don't have direct contact with patients, I do work in the business office, I do work in the HR side. I still took all the precautions, ran a department to make sure everyone who's coming into the community is screened, and took all of the precautions for COVID. I know what COVID does. I've seen what has done to my coworkers. I've seen the losses. I've gone through all that. So I was hopeful. I was really hopeful. I do have an allergy to peanut oil, or peanuts, and anything that gets cooked in peanut oil, I react to it. It's not a severe reaction, but it's enough for me to make me aware the tightness of my throat, my sinuses, and I knew that coming into this, there was a possibility that I might have a reaction to it. Initially, I decided that I wouldn't vaccinate because I was afraid because of my history of allergies. I'm very sensitive with my skin, I break out, and so I was skeptical about it. I listened to the people I work with, I listened to the professionals, I listened to the nurses, and I could hear the voices of, if you don't get vaccinated, you're gonna die. You're stupid if you're not vaccinated. Look what is happening. Look how many people are getting sick. Look at our numbers. And so I started thinking, when I initially was asked which vaccine, because the health department was going to come and vaccinate us, and they wanted to know which vaccine I wanted to take because I had an option, either the Pfizer or the Moderna. And I had been hearing what Moderna was causing, and so I was definitely afraid of Moderna, and I did not want to be vaccinated with Moderna. And as I listened more and more, I started to, think, well, you know what? Maybe the Pfizer. If I'm going to be vaccinated, I'm afraid of dying. I don't want to die. I definitely don't want to be stupid or not knowledgeable, ignorant. There was a comment that if we can trust that you take something for a headache and it works, why can't you trust a medication? None of us have a medical degree, a scientific knowledge to doubt that this is not going to work for you. It's going to work for you because scientists say that it's going to work for you. And so I believed it. I convinced myself, even though my gut, I was scared, but I didn't want to die. So I did it. The opportunity came for me to take the vaccine a week earlier than what I was scheduled to take it. And, I'm not a believer Christian. I do believe in God. And I prayed and I told myself that I was going to leave it all in God's hands. And I took the vaccine. Still hoping that when I went to the team of professionals and I told them that I had an allergy and I answered yes to 2 of the questions, that they would try to explain to me or tell me maybe it isn't such a good idea that you get vaccinated. And so I insisted. I kept telling everyone, I have a peanut allergy, I have a peanut allergy. I take prednisone for my skin when I have a breakout. And they told me, it's okay, it's fine, you're gonna be fine, it's all right, we'll just document it here. And so I went and I had my vaccine. I am deadly afraid of needles. So initially I was nervous and scared, and I knew that my heart was gonna be racing. So I took a deep breath, and I felt very little when the needle went in my arm. And I kind of relaxed because that's what I was afraid of, the needle puncturing into my skin. I didn't feel anything, nothing burned, nothing hurt, it was fine. I took a deep breath, I stood up, everybody clapped, and they said, yes, I got a big ol' hug, big ol' 5, we're good. I walked away from the room, I don't know, maybe 100 feet, and I felt it. When I approached the elevator, I felt something come over me. I felt drunk. I felt my head, I felt something go through my brain and my head, and I felt lightheaded. I felt real lightheaded. I felt like my head would go left, but my body wanted to go right, and my knees wanted to buckle. I felt really weak, and I told one of the nurses, I told the team that I was with, that I wasn't feeling well, that I was feeling sick. I felt very, very lightheaded. One of the individuals said, well, maybe it's because we haven't eaten, because here it was, 3:45, 3:48, and we had been working, we were doing COVID vaccines on one side of the building, and we were doing COVID testing on the other side of the building. And I was on the side where we were doing the COVID testing, getting all the paperwork, printing all the requisitions, getting the requisitions after they were printing, cleaning, disinfecting. So it was a very busy day, and we never got to go eat. So the idea that they had was that I was suffering from low sugar, and I just needed to sit down, catch my breath, and they were trying to put something in my stomach as quick as possible to try to keep me from feeling sick. So they walked me outside. One of my coworkers, who's a nurse, walked me outside and sat with me and kept talking to me. And I kept telling her how I still felt dizzy. And as soon as I sat down, I felt like I had no ability to stand up or walk at all. I felt weak. Somebody else went to go get me something to drink, get me a water, get me some food, and I sat there. At some point, they came with food. They brought a box of pizza, and they asked me to eat a slice of pizza to make me feel better. So I ate a slice of pizza, and I was told, well, eat another one because it's not enough. And I said, well, I'm gonna try to walk and get up to see if I can walk, because I feel like I can't. I don't think I can drive. And so I went ahead and stood up and walked. And I said, I feel like it doesn't feel right. And I was told, well, the balcony is uneven, so I feel the same way. So that's probably why you're feeling the way you do, because it's not an even ground. I said, okay. And so I came back around and I sat on the other side of the table, and I got another slice of pizza, thinking that, okay, well, maybe if I eat something, it's gonna go away, it's gonna feel better. So as I sat there and I ate the pizza, I looked at the rails, because there's the metal rails, and I could see that my vision was blurry, and I could see double rails. And at that time, my phone was going off because they were looking for somebody else to be vaccinated. And so the person that was with me left to go figure that out and asked if I was okay. She didn't want to leave me by myself, but I said, I'm gonna be okay. And she walked away. As she walked away, no sooner than seconds after she walked away and the door shut and I was by myself on the balcony, I felt the back of my neck, my muscles get very, very tense. And I felt the hot warmth come going through the back of my head, all the way to the front of my head, and my forehead felt cold, like a cold sweat. And I immediately started to black out. I felt as my head twisted to the left and I was gonna fall. So I got my phone and I started to text, and I was looking at the last person that I had texted, which was one of the nurses, one of the head nurses. So I texted her and I told her to help. I wrote the word help and hurry. And I waited there, breathing, talking to myself and telling myself, don't pass out. Breathe, breathe. It's okay. Don't fall. So I took a deep breath, and as I took a deep breath, my tongue spasmed and it felt like it hit the roof of my mouth and everything in my throat stopped. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't move my tongue. It was attached to the palate of the roof of my mouth, and I couldn't breathe. And I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was gonna pass out and I was gonna die. And there was nobody there to help me. I was by myself. I guess it seemed like forever, but at some point, somebody came, and I kept forcing my tongue. I kept forcing myself to swallow and breathe, and I could breathe through my nose, but I couldn't swallow. My tongue was stuck to the top of my throat, I felt like I was gonna swallow my own tongue. Like my tongue was trying to go to the back of my throat, and I kept fighting it and fighting it. Finally, somebody came. 3 people came. The CVS technician or nurse or whatever came because they were grabbing an EpiPen. But they decided not to administer the EpiPen because I could breathe. And so they didn't think I was going into anaphylactic shock. And so they decided to call 911. I kept having episodes after that, one after the other. I counted them. There was like 3 episodes that I had, and still no EMS. So they decided to take me from there and go take me to a room and try to lay me down. And I didn't want to lay down because I felt like if I lay down and I closed my eyes, I wasn't going to wake up, because I felt something strong take over me and made me feel very weak. So I asked if I could go to the restroom. So I went to the restroom. I came back. They set me in a room. I had another episode at the room. I'm still waiting for EMS. At some point, the charge nurse, the head nurse, the director of nursing came in and took my blood pressure and my oxygen, pulse ox, and it was fine. I was 98, 99. My blood pressure was fine. They said there was nothing wrong. I was good. That CDC had reported that numbness of the throat, it was a side effect, so it was just gonna wear off. I kept telling them that it was not numbness of the throat. I was not having numbness of the throat. Something was happening to my tongue, and the ability of me to swallow, I didn't have it. I couldn't swallow when I was having those episodes. I was having episodes. I kept telling them I'm having another episode. So after she took my blood pressure, minutes after that, EMS came in. EMS came, they took my blood pressure, they did my oxygen, and they said I was not having an anaphylactic shock. I was not having a reaction to COVID vaccine because they couldn't see it. The EMS was not a gentleman. He was kind of rude. He told me that if I wanted to go to the hospital, they would take me to the hospital, but he didn't recommend that I go to the hospital because there was a long line waiting, and there was a lot of COVID patients, and so they suggested I just go home. But I didn't want to go home because I know what was happening to me, and I didn't want to be by myself. I was scared that if I black out or I had another episode, there was nobody there to help me. So I didn't want to go. I kept telling him something was happening to me, and just because he couldn't physically see what was happening to me, It didn't mean that nothing was happening to me. I knew that I was having these episodes, and they were very real, and they scared me. And he said, and I told him I didn't appreciate the way he was talking to me and the way he was coming on to me like there was nothing wrong to me, nothing wrong with me. And he said that's not what he meant, that if I wanted to go to the hospital, he would take me to the hospital. I told him I wasn't comfortable with services anymore because I knew how he felt, and he didn't believe that there was anything wrong with me. Therefore, I didn't think he could help me. So he said, since I refused to go to the hospital, they were leaving. So I told, they sent somebody else to come and talk to me, someone who works in the hospital, who's more of a calm manner. And I cried a little bit. Another nurse came in, and I told her something was wrong with me. Something was happening to me. And just because people around me couldn't see it, didn't mean that it wasn't happening to me. They could see, she said, I could see that there's something's wrong with you. Obviously something is happening to you. They just don't know what's going on. I told her, she suggested I go home, and I said, I don't want to go home because I'm afraid of not being monitored. So they wanted to call my spouse. And I said, I don't want my spouse, I don't want my children to know, I don't want to worry my family. I don't want my family to know. So I said, I want to go back. I want to get back to work. I want to be around someone that I can scream for help if I need help. So they came in and they gave me a Benadryl. This must have been like 4:47, an hour into the vaccine. 4:45, 4:47, 4:42. And the reason why I know the times is because the texting of the timing and me looking at the time, so I have a stamped time of it. So I got back to my office and I texted my younger sister, and I told her that I have had a reaction to the COVID vaccine, and I didn't want to come home by myself, and I was wondering if I could go over to her house. She replied, and she said she wasn't at home, but she had cameras, and so yes, I could go over to her house. So it was a little bit after I texted her that I had another episode. This was my 4th episode. So I yelled at my boss and I asked her to please track it and keep it a time because I was having another episode. And she did. I was in my office by myself. She eventually walked into my office and said, that's 4 minutes into it. Are you still having it? And I said, it's starting to go away. I told her I didn't want to. She asked me if I wanted to come home, and I said, I can't drive. She said she would drive me home. I said, I want to stay here at work and continue to work because I don't want to be alone. And so she said, okay, so we continue to work. So now the Benadryl started to work. So my head, my throat felt like it was coming back to normal. But then there's a cramp that came around my ribs and all the way to my back. And it was a constant pain. It felt like because I've worked out before, when you work out and you're really sore or you've laughed too much and it's hurting. And it felt like I was cramping, like it was tight. The whole time it was tight. And I looked at the time and it was 5 something. And I kept looking at the time because I kept rubbing my stomach and I was being asked if I was okay. One of the nurses texted me, the same director texted me and asked how I was feeling. I told her the last time I had an episode, it was like 20 minutes into it. But now the cramping of my stomach, and she said another employee had stomach cramping too, but they didn't think it was a side effect. So I felt all of that, and then I could feel it moving down to my stomach. I could feel my stomach growling like if I was starving, and I could feel like air moving around, and then the pain went to like my ovary side. And I just worked through it. I just stayed there and I kept working through it. So finally we came home. I was very lightheaded. I was still very lightheaded. So I was driven home. I came in the house. I called another coworker to tell her what had happened to me. And I texted my spouse because I didn't want to worry her. And by now it was 7:30. And she acknowledged it and said, okay, that she would contact my in-laws. Like right now I feel really, really lightheaded. She would contact my in-laws because they're only a few minutes away. They are RNs, and if anything happened, they could get here faster than EMS. And honestly, I didn't have no faith in EMS because EMS wasn't able to help me. And so what was EMS gonna do? So I said, okay, it was okay. My mother-in-law called and she asked, she told me to take another Benadryl. So I took another Benadryl. I took the Benadryl about between 7:30, 7:45. When my spouse came home, I was very Benadryl. I started feeling tightness of my chest. My chest started feeling really, really tight. My left side would hurt. I felt like throbbing. The back of my throat, I started running. I started having a runny nose. I started dripping. My head was hurting. The back of my neck right here was very tense. And I started to get cold. I texted my boss and I told her what I was feeling. And she said that it was good that I was having those because it meant that the vaccine was working. It was doing what it was supposed to do. And for me to just rest. And so I did. I went and I lay down. I woke up about 7:30 and I was still very, very dizzy. So I took another Benadryl. And my blood pressure. I noticed my blood pressure when I got up was like 189 over 115. And I don't suffer from high blood pressure. So it scared me. So I kept monitoring my blood pressure, and my blood pressure kept, 159. It kept getting 159, 169. But the systolic blood pressure was always like 98, 100, 102, 104. I've documented all of that, wrote down every time my blood pressure. So I went back and I lay down, and it must have been like 12. And I looked at my spouse and I said, wow, I think like I'm over it. I think that I'm okay. I feel like I'm coming out of whatever it is that I took. And we looked, and everybody kept telling me 24 hours to 48 hours is gonna go away and you're gonna be fine. So I'm waiting for this 24 hours. I know that I'm only a few hours away from being 24 hours, so I'm thinking, good, it's gonna be okay. So at 1:30, I decided I'm gonna try to eat something. It's like 2 o'clock, close between 1:30 and 2 o'clock. I ate like I would normally eat. I ate. I was fine, but it must have been like 5 minutes after I ate, I had another episode. This episode was just the same as the very first episode. And it was very scary. My spouse went into panic and kept telling me to breathe, kept telling me to look at her and stay focused and breathe, and immediately dialed the number to my in-laws and asked for them to rush over here to come and help me. And I had back-to-back episodes. And she immediately ran, because the last time I had taken Benadryl was 7:30. So my in-laws were a little upset that I had gone off Benadryl. And so she ran to the room to go get the Benadryl, to give me Benadryl. So I took 2 Benadryls. The first Benadryl that I took got stuck in my throat. So I kept drinking water to try to push it. I kept trying to drink the water because when my tongue would spasm, I couldn't move it, so I couldn't swallow. But I was forcing myself to swallow, and I was forcing and pushing it for the Benadryl. So I took the next Benadryl, the spasm went away, and I took the next Benadryl. I could feel it that it had gone down. And I sat, and my in-laws got here. Took them like 6 minutes to get here. They told me I needed to call a doctor. I needed to reach to a doctor and make an appointment because this was not normal. It was obvious that I'm reacting to the vaccine. So I don't have a PCP, so I reached out to my sister in Houston who works for medical practice to see if they could get anybody locally that they would recommend for me to go see. And at the same time, I called an individual that I know that is a nurse practitioner to see if maybe he knew somebody that I could see. It took a while for that individual to get back. Meanwhile, I reached out to my younger sister, and she reached out to her PCP, and he said that they could see me. I called, and they said that they could see me the next day, at noon, like 1:40. I had an appointment. So I get the call back from the acquaintance that I have, that is the nurse practitioner, and I tell him that I've lost the ability to swallow, and how I can't, when I have these episodes, I can't breathe. And he tells me that I need to take myself to the emergency, and I need to tell them that I need a shot of steroid shot, or I'm going to. He said something, but I couldn't understand. My brain has been very foggy, so I don't know exactly what he said. But he said that I needed to go to the ER, and that I needed to contact my employer because this was a work injury. So I texted my boss, and I told my boss what I had been told. And she said that I needed to go to the clinic where we send everyone who has injuries, but then called me back or texted me back and told me no, that I was advised to go to the ER. So she emailed me the authorizations for me to go to the ER. So I went to the ER. I registered. They took me to the little triage, and they asked me what was wrong with me. And I told them that I was having an allergic reaction to the COVID vaccine. And they asked me if I had any allergies. I told them I had allergies to peanut oil, and I didn't really like taking Benadryl, because when I took Benadryl, I felt like if I fell asleep, I can't wake up. I can't function with Benadryl. She argued with me and told me that was not an allergy, and I said, okay. The physician or whoever was sitting right there next asked me, oh, you're having an allergic reaction to COVID? So he asked me to stick my tongue out. He checked my ability to push and pull and strength, checked my blood pressure, my oxygen, and said there was nothing wrong with me, that I was fine, that he goes, it's not an allergy. And I said, well, when I told them the night before what I had, and I had forgot to mention that I had broken out in my hives in my knee, and my hives were like big hives on my knees, like 3 huge hives on my left knee, the side where I took my vaccine. And he said, okay, well, now that helps me, so I'm going to give you some Benadryl. So continue to take Benadryl every 4 hours, and I'm going to give you steroids, a prescription, but I don't believe that the shot is going to help you because you're not having an anaphylactic shock. So he gave me that, and I went and I refilled. So I came home and I continued to take the prescription that I was told to take. The next day, can you pause? So here it was Thursday night, and I was hungry. I've been drinking water because water doesn't do anything. I could drink the water. I could drink Sprite. I could drink Coke. I was told that maybe I should try liquids. Maybe not to try foods that were heavy because maybe that's what triggered the spasm. So for me to try something just soft. So I'm hungry. So I get a chicken noodle soup. And as soon as I took the chicken noodle soup, and as soon as it touched my tongue, it went into spasm. So I couldn't eat it. I had another episode. So I asked my spouse to, water it down. So eventually I was able to eat it, but it really wasn't soup. It was just water with noodles floating around. So I ate very little of it, and I went to bed, medicated myself with Benadryl, took my steroid. I'm waiting for those, now I'm past 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. I'm waiting for 48 hours. And I have hope because the next day I have an appointment with a doctor. So I get up in the morning, my blood pressure's sky high again, 115, 109, 180 something over 115, 109. The systolic is what kept bothering me, because I know a little bit about what happens when your high blood pressure killing your kidneys. One point I was a dialysis technician, and I don't want my kidneys to be messed up. I don't want my liver to be messed up. I'm very aware of the reaction that my body has. I'm very in tune with my body. If I don't need to take something for pain, I'm not going to take it, because I don't like how it makes me feel. So I went to the doctor. I told the doctor that I told him my whole story from the beginning, like I've just told you. That he didn't have any answers. He said that, and I told him, said, and I want to point out my blood pressure. He says, well, I wanted to talk to you about your blood pressure, because we noticed you're suffering from high blood pressure. And I said, well, I've never had high blood pressure in the past. My history has always been 120, 125 at the most, and the systolic, and the dystolic has always been 70s. If it ever got to 80, it was too high. Like I was concerned, like, oh my God, I'm 120 over 80. Oh my God. And so I've always been very aware of that. And so we talked, and I asked him if he said that he wanted to start with doing blood work and go from there. Because he doesn't know how to treat it. He wants to treat whatever the blood work says. And for now, he wanted to treat the blood pressure. And I asked him, I said, so in your opinion, I did not have a vaccine, I don't have a COVID-19 vaccine allergic reaction. And he said, well, I can say that, but why don't we just start by doing some lab work, and I would recommend that you don't take the second dose. So he left, and then the actual physician came in, and he told me that he didn't think it was COVID related vaccine, because the proteins on the vaccine, the potassium and the sodium, and he started naming things. He goes, and then there's vaccine. He goes, and really it's the second dose that is supposed to have all these things that people might react to. But no, I don't suggest you take it, and we'll just monitor your labs, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. So I left there,
He didn't recommend that you take the second dose.
Yes, he did not recommend that I take the second dose. And so I left there kind of defeated, because I know what's happening to my tongue, and by now I have enough common sense to realize that food is triggering it. That whenever I put something in my mouth and I go to eat, something happens. And so now I'm trying to figure out, okay, I need to figure out what's going to trigger it and what's not going to trigger it. Because I can't eat. And so